Ladies, if you ever wanted to smell like a witch, then this is the fragrance for you, so stay tuned. Hey, what's up? Hunter here and welcome back to the channel where I upload weekly fragrance content, so you already know what to do. Hit the subscribe button down below and also make sure to follow me over on my Instagram page. So today we are reviewing another fragrance from the house of Louis Vuitton. This particular one is part of the women's line and it is Matière Noire, which is probably the darkest fragrance within the women's line from Louis Vuitton. And like I said in the intro, would be like a signature scent for a witch. And Matière Noire in French actually means dark matter, and dark matter is what this fragrance smells like. So I'm very excited to be bringing this review because I'm a huge Louis Vuitton fan. I've reviewed around 15 Louis Vuittons at this time, and the only other women's fragrance I've reviewed from Louis Vuitton is actually a Trap Res, which is probably my personal favorite on a woman, but that particular one would be like for a princess. This one is for the witch. Now let's go to some information. Matière Noire was launched in 2016. I believe it was one of the original launches from Louis Vuitton because in 2016 is when they actually came out with their fragrances for women, and then I believe a year later is when they came out with the men's line, and this was part of the original lineup. And I'm honestly surprised this fragrance has stuck around since 2016 and hasn't been discontinued from Louis Vuitton because it's a very daring, challenging fragrance, and I couldn't imagine really selling that good to the general public. And since Louis Vuitton discontinues fragrances all the time, this one I guess has stuck around, and I'm glad it has because this kind of fragrance is right up my alley, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. For the retail price on the 100 ml like I have in hand, it's going to run you $320, which is pretty expensive, and that is at the time of the recording because Louis Vuitton usually raises their prices every single year, so you might be watching this and it might be more expensive, but right now the retail is $320. However, the good thing about it is once you go through your bottle, you can actually take it back to a Louis Vuitton boutique, get it refilled for around $100 off. So if you go through your bottle, do not throw it away. Concentration, just like the majority of Louis Vuittons, is an eau de parfum. So you are getting a very highly concentrated fragrance, obviously more than like an eau de cologne or an eau de toilette, which is always good. The perfumer is the man himself and a master perfumer, Jacques Cavalier, who's actually probably my favorite personal perfumer. And he's actually the in-house perfumer as well for Louis Vuitton, which means he's created all of the Louis Vuitton fragrances. And he's also created fragrances for like Bulgari, Tom Ford, etc. And whatever fragrance he makes, he usually never disappoints. With all that information out of the way, let's look at the packaging and presentation you're going to get with Matière Noire now. All right, so we're going to be looking at my Sur La Route box because I can't find my Matière Noire box. However, they're identical boxes with this kind of recycled paper box. Of course, eau de parfum 100 ml. On the bottom, you have your barcode and batch code to authenticate your product and see when it was produced. On the back, you do have some of your ingredients and information. And then on top, you do have the LV logo. And this does open up into a Louis Vuitton canister where your fragrance is housed. And you also do get that kind of classic Louis Vuitton brown box with all your fragrance purchases. So take a look at the bottle, which I love the Louis Vuitton bottle. It's probably my favorite designer bottle. It's in the game. Even though they're simplistic, I love the art style. Now, looking at this juice, you can see how dark this juice looks. It looks like a witch's potion, to be honest. Of course, you have Matière Noire in black, Louis Vuitton embossed. On the bottom, you do have etched in all your information as well as a batch code. Nothing on the back. On top, within the women's line, you do have that gold LV. Nothing inside of the cap, nothing on the atomizers, and these are magnetic, which is a nice touch. In the top, you have black currant and watery notes. In the mid, you have rose, cyclamen, narcissus, and jasmine. And in the base, you have oud, patchouli, incense, and benzoin. And this will be classified as a floral woody. So let's spray this and test out these LV atomizers. Now that wasn't that good, but there you go. It is a very good pressurized atomizer you're gonna get with these. So let's go ahead and remind myself of this dark matter fragrance. So smelling it right away, if I ever smell this on a woman, I'm gonna stay far away because I already know she's trouble, to be honest. Because in that opening, you're gonna get this very dark, inky, fruity black currant note, just an overdose of black currant right away. But alongside that black currant, you are gonna get that kind of Louis Vuitton signature watery notes. It seems like the majority of Louis Vuitton always have this kind of aquatic touch going through the entire fragrance. That is just far behind me black currant. Just the opening from the black currant is so thick and syrupy. And that's exactly why it just reminds me of something a witch would wear. It's something like a potion a witch is like stirring in her pot. She's putting black currant syrup in there, stirring, adding a few drops of water. That is the vibe this opens up with. And then once we make our way into the mid, forget about all the other florals besides that rose. The rose is the main floral going on in that mid. It's not like a beautiful pink rose. It's a very red, dark, jammy rose. It's just one of the darkest roses I've ever smelled in a fragrance. It's so dark that it's almost purple. It smells like what a purple rose would smell like. And that black currant isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So you're still getting that very dark, inky black currant mixed in with that dark, jammy rose. Finally, when we get into the base of Matière Noire is where it becomes the most challenging. And that's coming from that very barnyardy oud. And if you aren't familiar with the note of oud, it is actually a moldy wood, so it's going to give off that pungent, earthy kind of barnyard smell. Not all the time oud comes across as barnyardy, but in this one, it absolutely does. And that's why I kind of said to your average person that isn't really big in the fragrances, and they smell this, you're going to be like, wow, what is that? It's going to be very off-putting, unless, of course, you have a trained nose. And for me personally, oud is one of my favorite notes of all time, just because of how exotic it is, how luxurious it smells. It's very rich. And oud is basically known as the black gold, just because of how expensive it is. And trust me, this fragrance smells very, very expensive. But just be warned, if you aren't used to oud or you never smelled oud before, this is not where you want to start. And for all my guys watching, this is pretty much Nouveau Monde for women. And Nouveau Monde is also a very barnyardy oud in the men's line. And I'm not even talking about Ombre Nomad or even Nuit de Faux, which are both also ouds, but those are in the Middle Eastern line. But along with that very barnyardy oud, you are going to get a earthy patchouli, and patchouli is one of my favorite notes as well. Basically, oud and patchouli are probably my top 3 of notes of all time. And you are going to get a smoky incense to kind of round it off. So just a dark, dark base that is going to catch people by surprise. But that's also the reason why this is probably my favorite fragrance within the women's line for me personally. Not something I would want to necessarily smell on a woman, but I appreciate this fragrance because of how artistic it is. And also probably the only fragrance from the women's line that I would wear personally, but we'll talk a little bit about that later. Now for the best seasons to wear Matière Noire, this is primarily going to be suited for the colder months like fall, winter, and spring evenings, not necessarily the summertime, even though it does have that kind of watery aquatic top, but that's far behind all the funkiness and dark notes going on. So primarily the colder months, because this could be way too thick and potent on a hot summer day. Trust me, oud, especially the way oud is done in this fragrance, does not mix well when you're sweating. Now for occasions, I personally would recommend wearing this on a formal situation, just because of how exotic, luxurious this fragrance smells. Probably best suited for maybe going to a wedding, somewhere where you're dressing up in a nice dress. If you're a woman watching this, if you're a guy watching this, if you're like suited up in a tux or a nice suit, I can definitely see this wearing the best in a nice black dress. Also could be worn during a date night because it is kind of sexy, but just be warned, hopefully the guy likes girls that are trouble, because that's the vibe this gives off. So for gender, obviously, like I've been saying, this is part of the women's line. I would say though it's the most unisex from the women's line, so I would categorize it as unisex, leaning feminine at the end of the day. So if you're a guy watching this, you love oudy, rosy fragrances and fruity fragrances, you could definitely check it out, but it still does definitely lean on the feminine side of things. And for age groups, I would say this is a very mature fragrance. A woman that is a little bit older, maybe like late 20s, 30s, 40s and up. Also a woman that has her life together, maybe has kids and things like that, is successful. That's the vibe I get when I smell Matière Noire. It's not really a youthful fragrance. It's not really playful. It doesn't smell like a teenager fragrance at all. And when you think of maybe older women's fragrances, you probably think of like rose, like your mom's rose fragrance, or very white florals or something like that. It doesn't really go in that kind of direction, but it just smells like a mature, classy woman. I just really couldn't picture a younger, maybe early 20s girl wearing this, unless obviously she loves perfumes, and that's different. Now, wrapping the review off, talking on the performance that you should expect when you get Matière Noire. Actually, this fragrance is above average. It's almost a beast mode when it comes to the performance, because from my testing, I got around 10 hours of very, very good longevity. So this is going to easily get you through the entire day without any problems, maybe even up to that 12-hour mark of longevity. And this is actually on skin, so not even clothes. If you spray on clothes, just forget about it. and even on skin. When you shower, you're gonna have to get a loofah and scrub to get it fully off of your skin. Very dark, potent fragrance, and you kind of look at that juice color as well, and it gives off that vibe. It's almost on the same level as like Ombre Nomad from Louis Vuitton, which is known to be a beast and probably the best performer in the house. And also when it comes to the projection, this stuff is a loud projector. It's almost room filling, and also because of how unusual and dark and earthy this fragrance smells, just be cautious on who you wear it around, because you might get a few looks like, wow, who is that? Or even have some people be like, wow, why do I smell a witch in here? So be cautious of that. Just know who you're around and your surrounding, and just be self-aware. But I could also possibly see somebody asking you, what are you wearing because it smells good? Just primarily because of the fact that nobody has ever smelled anything like this. Especially if you're just out in public and stuff, this is not a fragrance that your average person on the street has smelled before. So without a doubt, will get you attention. Maybe bad attention, maybe good attention, but at the end of the day, you're gonna get looked at. So that's gonna wrap up my review of Louis Vuitton's Matière Noire. Let me know down below if you've actually tried this fragrance. If you have, what are your thoughts? And also, what is your favorite fragrance within the women's line? I'm very interested in that. But besides that, leave a like on the video, subscribe below if you guys haven't already, and of course, I'll see all of you back here in my next upload. Take care, everybody.